My speech and my proclamation were not with plausible words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might rest not on human wisdom, but on the power of God. Yet among the mature we do speak wisdom, though it is not a wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are doomed to perish. But we speak God's wisdom secret and hidden, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the human heart conceived, what God has prepared for those who love him. These things God has revealed to us through the Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For what human being knows what is truly human except the human spirit that is within? So also no one comprehends what is truly God's except the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we may understand the gifts bestowed upon us by God. And we speak of these things in words not taught by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual things to those who are spiritual. Those who are unspiritual do not receive the gifts of God's Spirit, for they are foolishness to them, and they are unable to understand them, because they are spiritually discerned. Those who are spiritual discern all things, and they themselves subject to no one else's scrutiny. For who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. May God add his blessing to this word.
When I was going to seminary, there we go. When I was going to seminary in Johnson City, Tennessee, back in the mid-90s, there was a church not far from the Eastern Tennessee University campus called Grandview Christian Church. And grand it was. It was right across the street from this golf course that had rolling hills. And then past that are these big, gorgeous, what they call mountains back there. They were big hills, and it was good. They called them mountains, but it was a grand view for sure. And Grandview Christian Church was, like us, a Stone Campbell Heritage Church. Remember we were talking about the first American-born Protestant denomination? Same folks, except for think of us as cousins who don't always see eye to eye with each other, the kind that you can sit peacefully and eat quietly with at the same table as long as you don't talk about religion, you know? Anyway, Grandview Christian Church in Johnson City, Tennessee is one of 4 major Christian churches in the greater Johnson City metropolitan area. And I say 4 major churches because literally there are dozens of these Christian churches in and around Johnson City. These were the 4 main ones. And population-wise, Johnson City has about 20,000 people less than Chico. So if you're like me and you're doing the math, you're thinking, why in the world are there 4 major Christian churches in a town of only about 66,000 people? Well, because each of these churches in Johnson City has their own flavor. Downtown Christian Church is a downtown church. It's a church for folks who live near the downtown area. It is a good mix of people, different economics, different races, things like that. But they're kind of a no-nonsense church. There's not a lot of frills and things. Very practical church. And then there is Boone's Mill Christian Church. Now, you remember back in the day when Donnie and Marie Osmond used to sing about a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll? Boone's Mill was the country church. Compare that to the Central Christian Church, which was just, they were the Donnie Church. They were the rock and roll church, okay? If you could call Donny Osmond rock and roll. Hey, you know. But Grandview Christian Church, Grandview was the academic church. It was the scholarly church, because this is where the faculty from Emmanuel School of Religion and Milligan College and even some people from ETSU, this is where the faculty went. So imagine, if you will, what it would be like to be a seminary student at Emmanuel School of Religion doing an internship at Grandview Christian Church. How do you think it would feel to get up and preach in front of most of your professors, plus a bunch of professors from Milligan College and a bunch of faculty from ETSU? I will never know, because I didn't have to do it. My little supervised ministerial experience church was a Disciples of Christ church with the red chalice and the St. Andrew's cross up in Parisburg, Virginia. Thank God for that. My friend Aaron Weimer, on the other hand, he was the lucky guy who got to work at Grandview. And here's the thing about Aaron, okay? He was smart. He was a great student. He worked hard, had good grades, but he wasn't what I would call a scholar. He was not on the track for being a seminary professor. His call was to be a pastor. But still, the first time in the Grandview pulpit was intimidating for him. How'd it work out? Well, not long after he graduated, he became the senior pastor there, and he has held that position for almost a quarter of a century now. So I'd say it worked out pretty well for Aaron. But I wonder if he still feels a little intimidated or nervous when he gets up in the pulpit, even after 24 years. Now, according to one of my clergy mentors, that's not a bad thing at all, because it means you understand the prophetic responsibility for proclaiming good news. But still, in front of all those professors, ever been in that position before? You ever been in that position before, in a place where you feel like you are in way over your head? Ever feel like you are the rookie baseball player out on the field with the Hall of Famers and the superstars? I've been there. I have been there for sure. I felt that way when I was called to be the Associate Regional Minister for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Virginia, because on staff at that regional office was Marilyn Taylor, who was a big deal back on the East Coast in women's ministry and just the integrity of how she held that office and all of the wonderful things that she did for that region. Lee Parker, the regional minister, he was a good guy, but oh my word, Marilyn Taylor, that was amazing. I thought, I'm going to look like a clown working next to somebody of that caliber. And you know what? You would think that as you get older, you'd develop a little more confidence in your abilities and not be intimidated so easily. But here's a confession. The whole time that Dr. Katie Valentine was here, is she here today? She's not. She said, I told her she needs to come to church on Sunday, but okay. The whole time that Dr. Katie Valentine was here, I think I only preached from the epistles maybe 5 or 6 times, because she is a Pauline scholar, for goodness sakes. I mean, who am I to preach from Paul's epistles when Katie's around? I mean, I'd look at the lectionary a month ahead of time and I'd be like, prophets, nothing here. Psalms, that's kind of a weird one this week. Not sure that speaks to me. Gospels, oh dear heavens, the prodigal son again. No thanks. So how about the epistle? All right, time to look at that psalm again, Here's Here's a thought, though. Katie is a great scholar. Great scholar, but she is an even more awesome human being. Come to find out, she felt very intimidated stepping into the pulpit for the first few times that she did here. And I thought, why? I asked her, Katie, why? And she says, I'm not used to preaching. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. You prepare a sermon every week, week after week, all year, every year. How in the world do you do that? And I'm like, how in the world do you dig into the epistles in Greek, no less, and write academic papers for scholars in Norway to pick apart? And the conclusion that we both came to is it's just what we do. It's what we're called to do. And more importantly, it's not about us. It is about God working through us. So this is what's happening in our text this morning, which I might add is from the epistles. If Katie were here, I would be like, I'm confident. Paul came to Corinth feeling like he had nothing to offer. And Corinth, if you remember back from our Bible study on the epistles, it was a hub of scholarship in that part of the world for many years. It wasn't as legendary as Athens as far as its reputation for scholarship goes. Corinth was definitely in the big leagues when it came to philosophies and orators, though. So Paul said, I did not come proclaiming the mystery of God to you in lofty words or wisdom. He said, I came to you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. Now, to be fair, Paul, like my friend Aaron, was a smart guy. He could hold his own in the persuasive address and argumentation department. He just didn't feel like he could compare to the intellectual giants that the Corinthians were accustomed to. But also, to be fair, I need to give Paul credit for being aware of how foolish his message probably sounded to the Corinthians. Because in verse 2, Paul claims that the only thing he came to town with is Jesus crucified. Now, talking about Jesus as being in any way important was already a stretch of the imagination for these sophisticated, educated Corinthians. Because why in the world should they care about some failed Messiah from some hick backwoods Roman province? To me, I think it even makes it worse because Paul is talking about Jesus crucified. Now, you think talking about religion or politics at the dinner table is trashy. Talking about people who were tortured to death and nailed to the cross is much worse. And he did it anyway. Because in the Roman world, people knew what crucifixion was, and they knew what it was about. They understood the symbolism of it. But you're not supposed to talk about it in polite company. It's disgusting. And yet here's Paul saying, all I came to talk about is Jesus crucified. Now that's a pretty courageous decision on his part. Again, he is perfectly capable of speaking about the gospel in terms of deep wisdom. But he made a point to speak plainly, even to the point of being and sounding crude. He's really putting himself out there as far as exposing himself to the kind of scrutiny and humiliation that he'd likely face from people who are considered sophisticated academics. It'd be like my friend Aaron standing at the Grandview Christian Church pulpit in front of all these intellectuals, cracking open a Bud Light and saying, "Woo-wee, I got some gross story to tell you." You know? Now let's back it up a little. Because I don't want to give you the impression that Paul was the first century equivalent of Jeff Foxworthy. He was not. Much smarter than that. See, Paul didn't want to present the way of Jesus as just another complex, intriguing philosophy for the detached academic sophisticates to talk about. Jesus is way more important than that. Back in chapter 1, if you remember, Paul said that it is God's foolishness. God's foolishness is wiser than the wisdom of the world. And so Paul isn't saying that there is no wisdom here in this apparent crude simplicity. He says God's wisdom, secret and hidden, which God decrees before the ages for our glory. This wisdom of God, secret and hidden though it may be, is not understood by any of the rulers of this age. In fact, if any of them had understood it, they wouldn't have crucified Jesus in the first place, right? So what Paul seems to be saying here is that when we rely too much on the wisdom of the world to figure out the most important mysteries of the universe, we lose touch with the simplicity of the message. When it comes to preaching the good news of Christ, we almost always end up looking at it in all the wrong ways and all the wrong places and missing the whole point. And we do that in the church today too. We do this in the church. We in the church are guilty of complicating matters of faith. We look to all these complex atonement theories and verbal plenary inspiration of the scriptures and all these convoluted distinctions between justification and sanctification and just endless debates about predestination and premillennial eschatology. Those are some fancy words for you to take home today. But Paul is saying, listen, if we start here with all these intellectual acrobatics, we are missing the point. Because the fundamental mysteries of the universe are not complicated. In fact, they're given to us as gifts. God gave Jesus to us as a gift. Same goes for the Holy Spirit. It is a gift. Same with love and mercy and hope. All of them. Gifts. And all these gifts reveal the same thing, and that is the great mystery that has been hidden by our own blindness since the foundations of the world. The great mystery that God loves us deeply and passionately and overwhelmingly. The great mystery that God really, really likes you. That God looks at you and bursts into a love song singing, "Yes, how wonderful you are. Come dance with me, you who are beloved from the foundations of the earth." God looks at you and thinks, "I love you so much. I'd willingly die for you." Oh no, we say, "Oh, that's silly. It cannot be that simple." No. We need a complex religious system. Yeah, that's what we humans do. We go, that's what we really need. We need a complex religious system full of sacred rituals and profound liturgies and big $10 words to impress our friends with, even though they have no idea what we're talking about. We need, I tell you what we need. We need to know how many angels can fit on the head of a pin. We need to know how many wings the seraphim has. Surely we need a religious legal code. That's what we need, a legal code to meticulously define the line between holiness and sinfulness. And we must be able to police it fiercely. Has not the Torah given us 613 commandments, and not one jot or tittle shall disappear from the law until all is accomplished? Because isn't that what Jesus said? Yeah, but he also said those 613 tertiary laws can be summed up in two very simple commandments, and that is, love the Lord with your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. No way. Couldn't be that simple. I mean, who's your neighbor? Look, everyone's your neighbor. Just love them. And if it's still not clear, just follow me. Do as I do. Love everyone else the way that I've loved you. That's all there is to it. Just love them. They'll know that you are my followers by your love, not by your grasp of atonement theories. It's by your love. The deepest mysteries of the universe come down to one simple word that even a child can understand. Love. It is that simple. Really.